Oddly, I have a YouTube channel. That's not the odd part. The odd part is pickled beets does really well. So obviously I'm not the only one that loves pickled beets. There is a group of us out there, and welcome to the club. I love pickled beets. I'm obsessed. They're so good. No, they do not taste like dirt. There's an earthiness. It's all in marketing. I'm gonna make pickled beets. I'm gonna make a big batch. I will give you a quantity, but when I do it, I just cook all my beets and see how many I'm gonna get, because this is not the only batch even I'm gonna do, I promise you. So I have my beets here. I picked them this morning. You could have them in the fridge for a while. You leave the stem on when you pick them, and you leave about 1 inch or 2 of, I'm sorry, this is the root. These are the stems. You leave that much of the stems on. Grandma always said you do that because that helps them not bleed out all their color as they're cooking. I don't know if that's true, but Grandma knows. She knew best, and she made a lot of pickled beets. Actually, I always learned this from her. We always did this together, and Mom too, obviously, but Grandma and I especially did this one together. So I'm gonna put the biggest ones in the bottom of my pan, just because guess what? They're gonna take the longest to cook. So it makes sense that they're gonna be in the bottom of the pan where they're gonna be in there longer. And then as the top ones get done, you can kind of take them out. So I'm gonna fill the pan up, I'm gonna cover it with water, and I'm gonna put it on the stove to cook. So I'm putting this water about 1 inch over the beets. You want them to be covered. Otherwise they get discolored on top if they're not under the water. And then I'm gonna let it come to a boil. Obviously it's a big kettle. Yes, it takes a while, but I just like to do it in one kettle so it's done. We're cooking them to obviously soften them. Beets are really dense, they get really hard. So you cook them to soften them, and then also the skin is gonna come off so easy. So I'm just gonna cover them, let them cook. So while the beets are coming up to a boil, I get my jars ready. There are a lot of different ways to do jars. Do whatever works for you if you sterilize them a different way. These are washed and cleaned jars, and now I just pour boiling water over all the rims. So a lot of people say put them in boiling water for a while, the whole jar, or put them in the oven to sterilize. This is how my great grandma did it. This is how my grandma did it. This is how my mom does it. Guess what? This is how I do it. I pour the boiling water around each rim. That just sterilizes them, gets any contaminant off, and they're already washed and clean. So we're gonna do that around all of them. Then I let them cool off until I can touch them, pour the water out, and they're good to go. So all the beets have cooked. What I did is, while they were cooking, as they were boiling, after, a little bit of time, like 20 minutes, I would bring one up, and if I picked it up in the water and a knife inserted easily and came out, I pulled it out, put it in the bowl, and then I just kept going until they were all done. Because obviously, these bigger ones take quite a while. The smaller ones don't take near as long. So I'm letting them cool off just slightly. I'm gonna bring them over to the sink so they can cool completely. And then I'm going to just take off all the skins and all the roots. They're still a little bit hot, so while they're cooling a little bit more, I'm gonna just put the brine together because it's really quick. So the recipe I'm providing is a pretty accurate description of what you're gonna need as far as pounds of beets to some onion for the brine. Sometimes the brine doesn't quite go as far because depending how much you pack a jar, obviously it can take a little bit more, a little bit less brine. So it's a really easy one to mix up. You don't have to worry about it. We're gonna start with vinegar. Yeah, I buy it by the gallon jug. Do you know why? Because I go through more than one of these in a summer. Because I make a lot of brines for a lot of different pickled items I make. And what's great is it's equal parts vinegar to water. So for this one, I'm looking at my beets. I'm guessing we're gonna make approximately that much. And then I'm gonna have to add, obviously, that much water too. There we go. Now, the important part, actually it's not any more important than any other part, is you obviously need salt. Salt is important. Salt helps preserve it. It helps create the brine you need. It offsets the sweetness of the beets. And the type of salt you use makes a difference. The recipe I wrote for is like a regular salt or a canning salt, which is finer than like a kosher salt. Right now I have kosher salt, so I am doubling the amount of salt I put in because you need to do that. So the salt's in there. Original recipes have tons of sugar in them. Tons of sugar. And that just kind of helps balance them out. I don't like to do sugar if I don't have to, especially processed sugar. which I know sounds, oh, a little maybe, dare I say, pretentious, but I don't like to. So I put a little bit of honey in there, and that's just gonna help offset some of the tartness of the brine, and it's just gonna give it a little bit of sweetness. So I'm literally, for all of this, doing 1 tablespoon. It's not a lot, it's honey. So I like to tell myself it's not as bad. I mean, it doesn't affect your glycemic index as bad. And it's delicious, so I don't mind eating it. And then I'm just gonna put this on the stove, let it come to a simmer just because you really wanna dissolve the salt in there. I'm putting it on low because we have a lot of beets and it's gonna take us a while. I'm gonna get the water ready. So this is my big kettle I'm using. You can use any large kettle to can in, and a lot of times actually I'll use even a bigger one. You just wanna make sure you have something that fits in the bottom and raises the jars up off the bottom. If you don't, the jars could burst. That's no good. I'm gonna probably fill it up just slightly under the height of a jar because when you put the jars in, the water rises, so you don't need quite that much. It takes a while for water to get heated, so I'm gonna start it heating while I get the beets ready. So the water is heating up, the brine is heating up, I have everything ready to go, my jars are ready. I'm gonna now start doing the only part where you could get a little dirty, guys. Let me rinse off this bowl because I'm just gonna use it again. But we're gonna take all the skin off of these beets. If you don't want your hands to get stained, I would wear gloves. It might look like a murder otherwise, but I'm usually okay with that because my hands are just kind of always perpetually stained in the summer. But look how quickly and easily that skin just comes off. You want them obviously to be cool enough to handle because otherwise they get hot. And then you're ready to go. So what I do at this point, I just cut them. You want them in kind of bite-sized pieces. Some people do whole rings, but you kind of have to make sure you have an even size of beet. So instead I kind of go with, it's probably 1/4-inch slices. And you can go some chunks too. Like if you think that's even too big, you could cut that one. Whatever's gonna fit into your jar and whatever you like to eat, which sounds weird, but I think we all should like beets because they are all delicious. And honestly, sugar is made out of beets. They're extremely sweet. I mean, granted, I love them, but. So I'm gonna sit here, look how easy that just pulls off. I mean, it's actually kind of fun how easy it is. And then I'm just gonna sit and cut them. Sometimes what I do is I start at the bottom, cut a few whole slices off, then cut it down in half, and go sideways and cut some more nice pieces like that. Okay, I'm on the last one. So a lot of you might be asking me what type of beet I'm using. I like to use Detroit dark red to pickle. Why? Because you know, that's what my mom always did and my grandma. You like that dark red color. Guys, and I know it sounds like not, but I have been canning probably 30 years now because I started as like a baby practically in the kitchen always with them. So you can do any type of beet. If you happen to have golden beets, the Chicago, any of those, you can pickle them and that's fine. This is just what I'm used to doing and what we usually do. I grow all the other colors, and if I pickle them, I sometimes add different flavorings too, which a lot of people do with beets. You can put peppercorns in it. Some people do cloves. I don't like that. But you could do whatever you want. So I'm gonna clean up any splatters I have. Clean as you go. Now we're gonna bring these over to where everything else is. I'm gonna move my white towel because this can be messy, friends. So my brine is at a simmer, which is great. I'm just gonna turn it to low. I'm gonna check my water. It's getting hot, but we're getting close to when now I'll use it. So I wanna make sure everything's going. So I'm gonna take each jar one by one, and this is my process. I love onion and pickled beets. It pickles too, and it mixes with the beets, and it's delicious. So I start, put a little bit of onion in the bottom of my jars. You kinda wanna know how many jars fit in your canner to start with, because you can get the others ready, but you don't wanna put the lids and rings on until you're ready to have them go in. If you don't think you like onion in it, leave it out. Doesn't matter. You can totally just create your own. So now, I know, my hands, but it's normal. I'm gonna just start layering beets. I put in a few beets, then I put in a few more onion. Then I put in a few more beets. There's no right or wrong here. I kind of am pushing slightly, but the beets are such weird sizes and shapes that you can kind of just slightly push them. You don't have to worry about packing them too tight. There's some other things that I would say pack, but with these, you just kind of press them in. You make sure nothing is coming up above your 1/4 inch of headspace at the top. And then I'm gonna put in a few more onion just at the top. I like to see it all throughout, and then when you open it, you get little bits. A lot of times I will eat these with a salad or as a side almost, just because I have a beet obsession. They're good for you. They purify your blood. They're delicious. Okay, I'm gonna fill up the rest of these jars. Same process, some beets, some onion, some more beets, a little bit more onion, and then we'll get to canning. It's that easy, you guys. Okay, my brine was boiling. It's still hot. You wanna put it to hot. My beets are still warm. You like everything to be close to the same temperature, and since it's going into boiling water, you wanna keep it hot. So I'm gonna use my funnel, put it right on top. It helps just keep it a little bit cleaner. And I use a ladle, because that to me is the easiest way. And we're gonna fill these up. You kinda wanna make sure those bubbles get out. Since this isn't a really tightly packed one, I'm not too worried about the bubbles. I like to leave about a 1/4 inch of headspace there. On something that's really tightly packed, and I should say the reason you don't want bubbles is because any air that's trapped in there could be where bacteria would form. So that's why you want them to be completely covered with no bubbles. Anytime that there's something really tightly packed, a bubble, it's really hard for it to escape. Since these have so much, air around them because they're such odd shapes, the bubbles pretty much escape no problem. If you overfill one, don't worry. You can take a spoon and get some of it out. I've been there, I've done that. And if you're worried that the onion is not cooked, it will cook when it's in the water bath, and it will be soft too. So I have some boiling water here, and this is how I'm gonna clean the tops of them. Even though the jars were sterilized and they were clean, I like to make sure anytime after I've put the brine on or packed them full, you get dirt around the top, and you want a good seal between the lid and the jar. Read the directions on the box of lids, by the way, to how to clean them. On these, you just wash them, dry them, and use them. So I'm just making sure that seeing it gets a little bit of redness on it, so you know that there was some dirt on there. So that's why you're just going around, even if you don't see any, even if you say, I'm so careful. When you're going to the work of canning, you might as well follow every precaution and make sure. So I'm going to do these in a water bath. Look at the USDA site for canning. It is going to tell you, depending where you live, with the elevation from sea level, how long you can something for, as in how long you process it for. And I'm just hot water bathing it as opposed to pressure canning it. These don't take too long, so you don't really need to pressure can them. So read the site, make sure to know. For me, I do these for 10 minutes in the water bath, but check for you because we all live in different areas. So I just buy lids every time because I reuse the jars every year and reuse the rings. You can buy rings, new ones every year, but why? You want to tighten them just to when you meet some resistance. Don't make them so tight that you're straining to actually close them, because then that could cause them to buckle as they're cooking, and you don't want to do that. You also want to make sure that there are no chips on the jars. Any of that can cause a place where they wouldn't maybe seal. So just examine everything, make sure, especially like me, when you reuse your jars year to year, it's very possible that there could be a chip on them. So my water is at a good boil. And now I'm just gonna start putting the jars in with the jar lifter, because no one wants to put their hand down into boiling water. That is not smart. Even if you think you can do it, don't. This jar lifter has rubber on it, which I find really nice. It just helps you feel like you have a better grip. You wanna make sure, at first when you put them in, the water probably won't cover it because you may not put that much in. But then as you put all the jars in, make sure that they are covered. I like to cover them by like 1 inch of water. And you can see the water's getting displaced enough that they're gonna be covered just fine. We're gonna put one in the middle, and then we'll put one more. We'll bring it back up to a boil, and then start counting time. Okay, I am boiling. The water bath has officially started. I'm gonna time it, then take them out, and we will have canned beets. So easy. Okay, these have cooked. I'm gonna start taking them out. You just kind of slightly, as you pull them up, just let the excess on top drip off a little bit. Then I'm putting them onto a rack this time. It just helps them cool off a little bit quicker underneath too. Keeps them up off the counter maybe a little bit. And as you can see, they get that gorgeous color. That's why I like Detroit dark red. If you want that nice dark color, they just always have a nice, just a good color. So at this point, you have canned pickled beets. It takes a little bit, you have to cook them, all that, but guys, that is how easy it is. So I actually have I have an article in Better Homes and Garden, and it has some different recipes in it, and one of them is for beets. And for that one, I actually used a pink peppercorn and some orange zest to give them a different flavor, because you can totally play around with the flavors. So find a recipe you like, try this one out. It's very simple, it's very easy. And don't be scared of beets, because they are so good. So I hope you see how easy beets are. I hope you tell the world to make some pickled beets, because we all need more beets in our lives. Pass it around, tell everyone. I'm gonna finish up by canning the rest of these. And then here in a little bit, I'm gonna can even more. So happy beet pickling, guys.